Hey everyone! If you're writing code today, the security of the applications you build is your personal responsibility, period. Ignoring it? Well, that doesn't just mean you're writing bad code. It leads to very real, very painful consequences for your users and, honestly, for your career. In this explainer, Why Every Developer Needs Cybersecurity Knowledge, we're going to break down exactly why treating security as a we'll fix it later afterthought just doesn't fly anymore. 10 or 15 years ago, cybersecurity was mostly an IT problem, right? A network problem. You'd build a massive firewall, segment your network, and you'd feel pretty safe. Well, that world is completely gone. The latest Verizon data breach investigations report dropped a massive reality check. A staggering 84% of cyber attacks right now are targeting the application layer. Attackers aren't wasting time trying to smash through firewalls anymore. Instead, they're sending malicious inputs directly into your login forms. They're calling your API with crafted tokens. They are literally exploiting the very code you wrote. Make no mistake, your application, and especially your API, is the new perimeter. And perimeters, they need defenders.
And that data totally shatters a super dangerous myth we hear all the time, the idea that only the big tech giants get hacked. I talk to so many developers at startups who think, hey, we're way too small to be a target. But the hard reality is that 43% of breaches hit small businesses. Why? Because modern attackers use automated scanners. They aren't sitting in a dark hoodie hand-picking targets based on company size. A malicious bot absolutely does not care if your company has 5 employees or 50,000. It just sweeps the internet, finds an exposed API endpoint, exploits it, and moves right on to the next one. Your startup's API is being probed just as aggressively as Google's. So yeah, there is absolutely zero safety in being small. When you map out the most devastating headlines from the past few years, a pretty terrifying pattern starts to emerge. Think back to 2017. Equifax exposed 147 million records. Why? Because of an unpatched vulnerability in a basic Java web framework, a patch that, by the way, had been sitting there available for months. Fast forward to 2019, Capital One exposed 106 million records. That was due to a misconfigured web app firewall and a server-side request forgery vulnerability. Then we had the total global meltdown of Log4Shell in 2021, literally just a flaw in a standard logging library everyone used. And in 2022, Optus exposed 10 million records just because an internal API endpoint was left wide open without authentication. Do you see the pattern here? In every single one of these massive disasters, the root cause was a totally preventable development or configuration mistake, not some crazy, exotic, genius-level zero-day exploit, just basic mistakes. So the whole situation is really summed up perfectly by this famous security saying, attackers don't break in, they log in. What ties all those massive breaches together is the simple fact that they were preventable. Attackers didn't need to deploy high-tech nation-state tools. They just poked around for input that wasn't validated, access controls that were a bit sloppy, or API secrets left hard-coded in a repo. Think about it. Attackers don't need to break the door down when you've left it completely unlocked. They just misuse the exact features you built, just in ways you didn't anticipate. And that right there is the absolute core of secure coding. You have to learn to anticipate the misuse of your own code. Let's raise the stakes for a second and talk numbers. According to IBM's 2024 Cost of a Data Breach report, the average cost of a breach has hit $4.88 million. And let's be real, causing a $4.88 million oopsie is a guaranteed way to ruin your weekend. On a per-record basis, every single exposed customer record costs a company around $165. That's detection, legal fees, notification, fines, the whole shebang. But what's truly terrifying is the stuff that doesn't even fit into that $4.88 million average. I'm talking about the unquantifiable, permanent reputational damage. When customers lose trust because of a headline saying their data got leaked, they just leave. No marketing budget in the world can fix that. For startups and mid-sized companies especially, a single security mistake in your code can literally be an existential threat. It's game over. Because the stakes are that high, those manual quarterly security reviews we used to rely on, they just aren't cutting it anymore. Adversaries today operate at machine speed. Literally, when a new vulnerability drops and gets a CVE number, automated scanning tools begin probing the entire internet for it within minutes. Not days, not hours, minutes. These bots are relentlessly crawling web apps, testing for SQL injection, sniffing around for exposed environment files. If you accidentally leave an S3 bucket publicly writable, a bot is going to find it almost instantly. This means your code absolutely needs to be secure before it deploys, because those automated scanners start attacking the exact second it goes live. Which brings us right back to you, the developer. Think about the daily decisions you're making. You might sit down at your keyboard thinking you're just knocking out features, but you are actually making highly sensitive security decisions every single day.
You're the one deciding the authentication logic, figuring out exactly who gets to log in. You're choosing whether sensitive user data is properly encrypted or just sitting there hanging out in plain text. You're the one picking which third-party libraries to trust, effectively importing their entire attack surface straight into your app. Heck, you even write the error messages. And if an error message is too verbose, it can link your entire database schema right back to an attacker. Every single one of these daily choices makes you the ultimate gatekeeper of user security. Whether you deliberately signed up for that role or not, it's yours. Now, I know a lot of developers who just assume, hey, the security team will catch my mistakes before production. But let's look at the share and balance here. In most organizations, you're looking at a ratio of about 100 developers for every one security engineer. They are drastically, incredibly outnumbered. Sure, the security team can set policies, they can run static analysis tools, they can offer guidance, but there is absolutely no way they can review every single pull request. They can't catch every vulnerable line of code you write. Security teams act as force multipliers. But security at scale? That only works when every individual developer steps up and owns the security of their own code. And if the technical reality wasn't enough to convince you, the legal landscape is shifting right under our feet. The Wild West era of just ship it and hope for the best is legally over. Organizations are facing massive accountability now. Under GDPR, data protection failures can result in fines of up to 4% of a company's global annual revenue. That's massive. Over in Europe, the new EU Cyber Resilience Act is flat out mandating that software must be secure by design. And in the US, Executive Order 14028 requires strict, defined security standards for any software sold to the federal government. The bottom line here is that software producers and the developers who write the actual code are now being held directly legally accountable for security. Okay, let's pivot from the grim stakes for a second and talk about an incredibly empowering reality. Because there is a massive upside to all of this. Mastering security is arguably the best career accelerator out there right now. Job postings for DevSecOps engineers, basically developers who deeply understand how to integrate security into their code, have exploded by over 35% year over year. Developers who actually know how to write secure code are in critically short supply. Companies are actively paying top dollar, a serious premium, for engineers who understand threat modeling and secure architecture. What used to be a little nice-to-have bullet point on a resume is rapidly becoming a highly lucrative baseline expectation. But here is the ultimate bottom line. I didn't know is no longer an acceptable defense. It just isn't. Ignorance doesn't protect your users when their private data gets stolen, and it sure as heck won't shield your company from those massive fines we talked about. We live in an era where security resources, robust documentation, and best practices are freely available everywhere online. Ignorance is increasingly becoming a choice. Every single developer who ships code into production shares the exact same responsibility for how that code behaves when it is inevitably under attack. All right, let's do a quick rapid-fire check to make sure these concepts are really sticking. Question 1. According to the Verizon Data Breach Investigations Report, what percentage of cyber attacks target the application layer? Is it 34, 54, 74, or 84%? Yep, the answer is 84%. This staggering statistic is exactly why the network is no longer the primary battlefield. Your code, the application layer itself, is where the attacks are happening right now. You are, quite literally, on the front lines. Okay, moving on to question 2. What was the root cause of that devastating 2017 Equifax breach? Do you remember? Well, it definitely wasn't some incredibly sophisticated zero-day attack. It was an unpatched vulnerability in a standard Java framework, a framework that actually had a fix available for months. This just really reinforces the fact that catastrophic breaches are rarely genius-level hacks. They are almost always basic, entirely preventable mistakes in unpatched dependencies. And our last question? True or false? Small businesses and startups are rarely targeted by cyber attacks because attackers prefer to focus on large enterprises. That is entirely false. Remember, 43% of breaches hit small businesses because automated scanners simply do not discriminate. If your application is connected to the internet, it is being scanned, period. There is no safety in being small. There are only soft targets and hard targets. To wrap all this up, I really want to leave you with this one thought. Cybersecurity is not some separate, isolated discipline from software development. It's a core part of software craftsmanship. Writing secure code is writing quality code. The exact same habits that produce clean, maintainable, and well-tested software naturally align with security best practices. At the end of the day, your users are trusting you with their lives and their data. So will you step up and build software that truly earns that trust? The best time to start was yesterday, but the next best time is right now. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this changes how you look at every single line of code you write moving forward.